I've always noticed that the rain in Cloverdale sounds different from other places, more insistent, as if it wanted to reach everyone. Now that Edward was gone, it was a constant reminder of the emptiness that filled the house. 3 months later, I was still making coffee for 2 in the morning out of habit. 43 years of marriage ended on an ordinary Tuesday. No dramatic last words, no touching goodbyes, just a heart stopping in my sleep, and I woke up a widow. Edward had always been stingy with his emotions, but reliable as a rock. Apparently, even in his passing, he'd stayed true to himself, quietly, uncluttered. Our house in Cloverdale seems too big now. 2 stories, 4 bedrooms, and a garden that Edward had methodically cultivated every weekend for the past 20 years. I have to hire a gardener, a young man named Oliver, who does everything wrong, but I hesitate to tell him. The phone rings at exactly 10 in the morning as scheduled. The screen reads Declan, my son, my flesh and blood, who for some reason I fear more than I once feared the strict teachers at school. Mom? Are you taking those pills, doctor? Brooks prescribed you? His voice sounds irritated, as if talking to me is an unpleasant duty that can't be postponed. Good morning, Declan. Yes, I'm following the doctor's orders, I answer, trying to sound cheerful. Good. Vanity and I will stop by on Sunday to check on you, I said, not a question but a statement. By the way, have you sorted out your father's things yet? Can we make room in the garage? That's the real reason for the call. Not concern for my health, but a garage that can be used to store their junk. Declan is 41, but sometimes I think he's still 15. The same selfishness, the same lack of empathy. I'm not ready to go through his stuff yet, I answer quietly. There's a heavy sigh on the other end of the line. I can almost hear him rolling his eyes. Mom, it's been 3 months. We need to move on. It's just stuff. To him, they're just things. To me, the last tangible evidence of a life together. I'll take them apart when I'm ready. There's a sudden firmness in my voice that surprises us both. Okay, suit yourself. See you Sunday. He cuts off the call without waiting for my response. I sit up, staring at the faded phone screen. When did our relationship turn into this? When did my boy, the one I read bedtime stories to, become this cold, calculating man? The house sinks into silence, broken only by the ticking of the old floor clock that Edward adamantly refused to change. They have character, Lori, he used to say. I walk up to our bedroom now, just my bedroom, and pull a photo album from the nightstand. I stare at snapshots from the past, as if trying to find the moment when everything went wrong. Here's Declan, 6 years old, smiling, hugging us both. Here's his high school graduation. He's already aloof, as if embarrassed by us. And here's his wedding to Vanity. He's looking at her with an adoration I've never seen directed at Edward and me. Vanity Petch, now of Newport. Tall, always impeccably dressed, with a smile that never reaches her eyes. She works in corporate training, always talking about some kind of training and coaching sessions. But in their 11 years of marriage, I've never once seen her show any real kindness or empathy. Lorraine, have you thought about moving to something more age-appropriate? Her favorite question, asked with fake concern in her voice every time they arrived. Edward couldn't stand her. A snake in designer shoes, he muttered as they drove away. And he was right. I remember how, at the funeral, she was more worried about taking appropriate photos for social media than supporting her grief-stricken husband. Although, to be fair, Declan didn't look particularly grief-stricken. I close the album and walk over to the window. The rain has intensified, pounding the roof with furious force. My thoughts go back to that night, just a week before Edward died, when he made the confession that changed everything. We were sitting in the living room. There was a documentary on TV about the Mediterranean, and Edward was watching it with unusual attention. I was knitting a scarf for Declan that he would never wear. Lori, Edward said suddenly, using my pet name. Do you remember that trip to Spain 15 years ago? Of course I remembered. 2 weeks in a small village on the Costa Brava, one of the few real trips we'd allowed ourselves. Edward was an accountant with his own small practice. I worked as a coordinator for an insurance company. We were never rich, but we weren't poor either. I remember it was wonderful there, I said, still knitting. I bought a house there, he said simply. The spokes froze in my hands. I looked up, sure I'd misheard him. You what? I bought a house. In that village, El Pueblo del Mar. It's small, 2 rooms with a sea view and a garden. It's in your name. I looked at my husband as if I'd seen him for the first time in 43 years. Edward, the methodical, cautious Edward who could spend a week thinking about buying a new coffee pot, had secretly bought a house in another country? But how? When? Was all I could squeeze out. 5 years ago, he said calmly, as if he were announcing the purchase of new socks. I'd been saving a little over the years, separate from our savings. Prices hadn't skyrocketed back then. Plus, I had some good investments I didn't tell you about. Why didn't you say anything? Edward turned off the TV and turned to me. His face, usually impassive, was a strange mixture of guilt and determination. First, I wanted to surprise you on our 40th anniversary. Then, he stammered, then I started to notice Declan's interest in our finances, how he and Vanity started hinting that it was time for us to simplify our lives. I realized that if he found out about all of our assets, he wouldn't rest until he took them for himself. I wanted to object, to defend my son, but I couldn't. Because Edward was right. In recent years, Declan had talked more and more often about not needing a big house at our age, that we could sell it and move into a cozy apartment or a comfortable retirement home. Every such conversation ended with a question about our will. I know he's our son, Edward continued, but I don't trust him, Laurie, and I certainly don't trust his wife. If they find out about the house in Spain, they will not rest until they force us to sell it and give them the money. What are you suggesting? I asked, feeling strangely calm considering the circumstances. I want you to promise me not to tell anyone about the house, even after I'm dead, he paused, especially after I'm dead. Why are you talking about dying? I tensed. Edward shrugged with the fatalistic simplicity that had always characterized him. I'm 68, Laurie. I've had 2 heart attacks. I don't plan on dying anytime soon, but we have to be realistic. When I'm gone, Declan's gonna come at you like a vulture. He'll want every penny of it. That house in Spain is your insurance policy. It's your escape route. I kept quiet, digesting the information. It was a strange feeling to find out that your husband had been leading a double financial life for years, albeit a well-intentioned one. It's all ready to go, Edward continued. The house is fully furnished, and the utilities are set up to be automatically debited from the Spanish account, which is also in your name. There's enough money in the account to last me several years. All the documents are in a safe in my office, you know the code. Edward, I don't even speak Spanish. It was the most ridiculous argument I could think of, but it was the only one I could think of. He smiled, a rare, warm smile that he saved for special occasions. Half the people in that village are retirees from England and Germany. You don't need Spanish to be happy there. I didn't know what to feel. Shock at the news, a strange gratitude for his foresight, resentment that he'd kept it from me for so many years, and an unsettling feeling that he was right about our son. Promise me, Laurie, Edward insisted, looking me straight in the eye. Promise me that you won't tell anyone about the house in Spain until you're absolutely sure it's safe. And I promised. And a week later, he died in his sleep. And I was left alone with a secret that felt physically heavy. I never dared to look in that safe after he died. It was as if opening it would finally acknowledge that Edward was gone. Or maybe I was afraid it would all turn out to be some kind of weird joke or death fantasy. But today, after Declan's call, I realize it's time I knew the truth. Edward's office has been untouched since the day he left. An old oak desk, a worn leather chair, shelves of books on accounting, and the historical novels he secretly adored. The safe, small, inconspicuous, is hidden behind a painting of a view of London. My fingers tremble as I type in the code, our wedding day. Inside is a neat stack of papers in a clear folder. On top is a letter sealed in an envelope with my name written in Edward's familiar, angular handwriting. Dear Lorraine, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer around, and our son has probably begun to take a keen interest in your finances and possessions. Everything I told you about the house in Spain is true. It's all yours. All the necessary documents are in this folder. You'll also find bank account details, maps, and contacts for the local manager who looks after the house. I know you're probably mad at me for keeping this from you. I know you find it hard to believe that our son could be so callous as to deprive you of everything. But trust my experience. I've seen too many families destroyed by inheritance to risk it. This house is your freedom, Lori. Use it when the time comes. Always yours, Edward. Tears cloud my eyes, and it takes me a moment to realize I'm not alone in the room. What are you doing in Dad's office? I turn around sharply. Declan is standing in the doorway. I didn't even hear him come in the house. You scared me, I say, discreetly putting the letter back in the folder. I thought you were coming on Sunday. I was driving by, so I thought I'd stop by. He walks into the room, glancing at the shelves of books. There's a lot of valuable titles here, you know. I should have them appraised. They're your father's books, not for sale, I say, feeling the familiar irritation growing in my chest. Declan smiles indulgently, like a small child. Mom, be practical. You need money more than you need old books. By the way, I spoke to a financial advisor. He thinks you should consider investing the money from the house sale in higher yielding assets. Selling the house? I ask him again, freezing. What sale? Well, we talked about it. He waves his hand nonchalantly. This house is too big for you alone. It's expensive to maintain. You could move to a smaller apartment or that retirement home I told you about. We never talked about selling the house, Declan. Yes, we did, Mom. It's just that you forgot. He looks at me with a concern that I can see through now. You've been forgetting a lot of things lately. That's normal at your age, but that's why you need help with your finances. I clutch the file folder tighter. Edward was right. Our son is really trying to take everything that isn't his, not even shy about using lies and manipulation. I'm not oblivious, Declan. My voice sounded unexpectedly firm. And I'm not going to sell the house. He sighs as if he's talking to an unreasonable child. Let's see what Vanity has to say. She can be persuasive. He glances at his watch. I gotta go. Don't forget to take your medicine. And he leaves, leaving me in Edward's office with a folder of papers in my hands and the growing realization that my late husband was much wiser than I'd thought. The morning light seeps through the curtains, forming golden patterns on the floor. I'm awake now, but I'm not up yet, allowing myself to leisurely sink into the new day. It's a habit I've picked up since Edward's death. I used to always wake up on my alarm clock, but now it feels like time has stretched out, becoming both my enemy and my friend. Today was Sunday, the day of Declan and Vanity's visit. I mentally prepare for their arrival as I would for a natural disaster, inevitable, destructive, but something to be endured. I force myself up, and as I pass the mirror, I notice my reflection. See Lorraine Newport, 65 years old, gray hair in a careless bun, wrinkles that Edward had once called wisdom lines. I don't look my age, older or younger, I don't know. The years have left their mark, but my eyes are still alive with the same stubborn glint of youth. I made breakfast avocado toast with eggs, the way Edward liked it. Then, on second thought, I put away the second portion. These mechanical acts of habit are the most painful reminder of loss. At precisely 11 o'clock, Declan's brand new SUV shows up in the driveway, huge, ridiculously luxurious for their family of two. They never had kids. Vanity always said that children are obligations that get in the way of self-fulfillment. Sometimes I think my grandson or granddaughter might have changed her, softened her, and sometimes I thank fate that it didn't happen. You wouldn't wish a mother like that on anyone. Mom! Declan's voice sounds fake cheerful as they enter the house without knocking, another little thing that stabs the heart. How are you feeling? Fine, thank you, I reply, accepting my son's formal hug and an air kiss from Vanity, who smells of expensive perfume and some strange chemical odor. Lorraine, you've lost weight, Vanity notes, giving me an appraising look. That's good. Overweight at your age is a direct route to joint problems. I smile without answering. Vanity always finds a way to give me a supposed compliment that is actually a veiled criticism. I made lunch, I say, heading for the kitchen. I hope you're staying. Declan and Vanity exchange quick glances. Actually, Mom, we have dinner plans, Declan says. We just stopped by to check on you, of course. They never stay for lunch even though I cook every time. I used to love to cook when I was young. Edward used to joke that he married me because of my apple pie. Now that I cook for myself, I've almost lost interest in cooking, but I always try for my son and daughter-in-law. Too bad, I say, trying to hide my disappointment. I made a roast. Red meat? Vanity raises her eyebrows. Lorraine, you know it's bad for your heart, especially at your... At my age, yes, I finish for her, feeling the irritation rising inside. I've heard about it, from you, many times. There's an awkward pause. Declan clears his throat. Mom, we actually came here to talk about something important. He pauses, obviously choosing his words. Vanity and I have been thinking a lot about your future. Here it is. I already know where he's going with this, but I decide not to make it easy for him. My future? I ask innocently. Yes. He looks around as if gathering evidence. This house. It's too big for you alone. The upkeep, the cleaning, the garden, it all takes effort and money. I can manage, I answer calmly. For now, yes. Vanity enters with that distinctive tone she uses in her corporate training sessions. But we have to think about the future. 5 or 10 years from now, it's going to be a lot harder to maintain a house this big. Exactly, Declan says. What if something happens to you? Fall down the stairs, for example. You're all alone out here. I'm struck by how easily they talk about my potential helplessness, as if it were a fait accompli, not a possibility that I'm actively fighting off with daily exercise and a healthy lifestyle. I have neighbors, I object. And I talk to Estelle on the phone every day. Estelle Barrymore is an old friend I met in college. She lives in the next town over and has called me every day since Edward died. Neighbors are no substitute for professional care. Vanity smiled, her trademark smile. Stretched lips, unaffected eyes. You know, we found just the perfect place. Sunny Acres is a boarding house for active retirees. It has a pool, a spa, even a golf course. And 24-hour medical staff, Declan adds in an unapologetic tone. It's perfect. Perfect for who? I ask bluntly. They exchange glances again. Their habit of communicating without words has always annoyed Edward. For you, of course, Declan looks genuinely surprised. We're concerned for your safety and your financial well-being, Vanity added. Maintaining this house is a waste of money. If you sell it now while the real estate market is booming, you'll make a good amount of money. Enough to live comfortably in a boarding house and still have some left over. It'll be left for them, I mentally finish. That's what this whole conversation is about. It's not concern for my safety or comfort. It's a desire to get the money from the sale of the house. I'll think about your offer, I say, realizing that a direct refusal will only provoke more aggressive pressure. Good! Declan brightens and pulls his cell phone out of his pocket. I think we should take some pictures of the house to show the realtor, just for a preliminary assessment, of course. Without waiting for my consent, he starts taking pictures of the living room, the dining room, the kitchen. Vanity, meanwhile, is opening furniture drawers, looking in closets, as if appraising the property. Do you mind if I measure the rooms? Declan asks, pulling out a tape measure. The realtor will need exact measurements. I watch their unceremonious invasion of my home mine and Edward's feeling a wave of resentment rise inside. But instead of letting it spill out, I just nod and say that I need to check something in the kitchen. Left alone, I let myself take a few deep breaths. Edward was right, completely right about Declan and Vanity. They're not just hinting at selling the house, they're already planning it without waiting for me to agree. And judging by their confidence, they have no doubt they can convince or coerce me. I return to the living room just in time to hear Declan tell Vanity in a low voice. I'm guessing 600, maybe 700. The house is old, but it's a nice neighborhood. What about her things? Vanity asks. You can't take much to a boarding house. Most of it will have to be sold or thrown away. Declan shrugs. Old furniture, books, who needs it? I cleared my throat, making my presence known. They turn around, but don't look embarrassed. Somehow that hurts the most. They don't even bother to pretend to ask my opinion of my own property. I think I'm going to go lie down, I say, suddenly feeling very tired. It's been a busy day. Sure, Mom. Declan comes over and kisses me on the cheek. We'll call again during the week to go over the details with the boarding house. And don't forget the documents we talked about, Vanity adds. Your will and power of attorney. Declan will need a signature authority to help you with your finances. I nod, not trusting my voice. They leave as unceremoniously as they came, leaving me in a house that now seems no longer mine. Only when their car disappears around the corner do I allow myself to cry. Not with sadness, but with rage. How dare they? How dare my own son treat me like a feeble old woman unable to control her own life? Wiping away my tears, I strode determinedly to Edward's office. It was time to get serious about the deeds to the Spanish house. The next few days pass in a strange calm. Declan calls twice, telling me what a wonderful boarding house they found, how much I'll love it, how it will solve all my problems. I answer evasively, saying I'm still thinking, that I need time. On Wednesday morning, the doorbell rings. A middle-aged man in a business suit with a briefcase in his hand stands on the doorstep. "Mrs. Newport?" he asks. "My name is Brandon Quirk. I'm with Homestead Realty. Your son made an appointment for me to appraise the house." I freeze, not knowing what to say. Declan didn't even give me a heads up. What's more, he made the appointment with the realtor without my consent. "Come on in, Mr. Quirk," I finally say, deciding I'd better find out how far my son has gone with his plans. The realtor walks inside, looking around with professional interest. "It's a beautiful house," he comments. "Classic architecture, good layout. Of course, it will need some modernization to maximize its marketability, but overall, it's a very promising property." He speaks of the house, where most of my life has been spent, as a commodity. Well, in a way, he's right. It's just another deal for him. "Minus Mr. Quirk," I interrupt him. "Have you spoken to my son about selling the house?" "Yes, of course." He pulls a folder out of his briefcase. "Minus Mr. Newport said you were planning to move soon and wanted to get a preliminary appraisal on the property. He was very specific about the timeline. He wants to put the house on the market within a month." I feel a chill go down my spine. A month. Declan plans to sell my house within a month without even getting my consent. "I understand," I say, trying to make my voice sound normal. "Could you show me the documents my son gave you?" The realtor hands me several papers. Among them are a preliminary contract with the agency, a questionnaire with a description of the house, and a power of attorney, a power of attorney, a power of attorney with my signature authorizing Declan to act on my behalf in real estate matters. Except it's not my signature. It's similar, very similar, but it's not mine. "Is something wrong, Mrs. Newport?" the realtor asks, noticing the look on my face. "No, nothing's wrong," I reply, deciding not to make a scene in front of a stranger. "I just didn't expect the process to go so quickly." "Oh, your son is a very energetic person," the realtor smiles. "He's already asked for information on several properties for your new home. Did he mention a retirement community?" "Yes, he mentioned that option." I return the papers. "Minus Mr. Quirk, I appreciate your time, but I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. I haven't made a final decision on the sale of the house yet. I need to discuss it with my son." The realtor looks surprised, but quickly pulls herself together. "Of course, Mrs. Newport, family decisions take time. Just let me know when you're ready to move on." After he leaves, I sit in the living room, stunned. Declan isn't just planning to sell my house, he's already forged my signature on the paperwork. This is no longer pressure, no longer manipulation. It's fraud, possibly even a felony. I'm calling Estelle, the only person I can trust. "Lori, what's wrong?" Her voice, as always, calms me down. "Declan forged my signature on the power of attorney," I say, still not believing my own words. "He's trying to sell my house without my consent." There's a pause. "Are you sure?" she finally asks. I'm positive. The realtor just left. He had a power of attorney with a signature that looked like mine, but I didn't sign it. Bastard, Estelle was never shy with words. "What are you going to do?" I take a deep breath. "I remember I told you about the house in Spain." "Yes, the one Edward bought secretly." "I think it's time to use that escape route," I say, feeling oddly calm about the decision I've made. "Are you sure?" "It's a big step, Lori." "What's left for me to do? Wait for Declan to take everything away from me? He's already shown what he's willing to do." "You could go to the police," Estelle suggests. "Forging a signature is a felony. I think about it. Report my own son?" Despite everything he's done, the thought provokes an inner resistance. "I don't want to take this to the police," I finally say. "At least not yet. But I have to protect myself." "And what are you planning?" "I'm going to look at the deed to the Spanish house. See if there's anything wrong with the title, the accounts. And then," I pause, realizing the seriousness of what I'm about to say, "and then I'll fly out there. Start a new life, away from Declan and his manipulations." Sounds like a good plan. Estelle's voice sounded approving. When are you thinking of going? I don't know yet. I need to sort out the paperwork first, maybe contact the house manager in Spain. Edward left all the contacts. I'll do that. Just don't do anything rash. And keep me informed. After talking to Estelle, I go to Edward's office and open the safe again. This time, I methodically examine every document, every piece of paper. Everything is exactly as Edward said. The house is fully registered to me. All the taxes are paid. And I have contacts for the local manager. One Javier Rodriguez. There's even a Spanish bank card in my name, with a decent amount of money in the account. I don't speak Spanish, and I don't know much about European law, but Edward seems to have thought of everything. The folder even contains a small phrasebook and contacts for a Russian-speaking lawyer in Barcelona. I spend the next few days in quiet, methodical preparation. I study flight schedules to Spain, lists of things to take with me, learn about health insurance for the elderly abroad. I don't tell Declan my plans, answering his calls evasively, giving the impression that I'm still considering his boarding house offer. Friday night, the doorbell rings. I open it and see Declan accompanied by an older woman in a strict suit. Mom, this is Mrs. Harper. He introduces the woman. She's the director of the Sunny Acres boarding house. I thought it might be helpful for you to talk to her, to learn more about the opportunities. I let them in, feeling a growing irritation at this uninvited visit. Mrs. Harper talks about personalized care plans, social activities, and safe environments. Declan nods in time with her words, occasionally casting glances at me to see if I'm impressed. That sounds interesting, I say as she finishes her obviously prepared speech. More than interesting, Mom. Declan smiles that special smile he uses when he's trying to sell something. It's perfect for you. And when do you plan to move? Mrs. Harper asks. I haven't decided I'm going to move yet, I answer bluntly. Declan throws a sharp look at me. Mom, we've talked about this. The house is practically sold already. Without my consent? I raise an eyebrow. Mrs. Harper looks confused, shifting her gaze from me to Declan. I think I'll wait in the car, she says, walking tactfully away. As soon as the door closes behind her, Declan turns to me. What does that mean? You agreed to sell the house. No, Declan, I didn't. Just like I didn't sign the power of attorney you showed the realtor. He's pale, but he's pulling himself together. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm talking about the fake power of attorney, I say calmly, though I'm seething inside. I'm talking about you trying to sell my house without my consent. That's fraud, Declan. Maybe even a felony. You're out of your mind, he snapped. I'm just trying to take care of you, and you accuse me of a crime. Take care of me? I almost laugh. Putting me in a nursing home against my will? Selling my house and probably embezzling the money? Declan takes a step toward me, and for a moment I think he might hit me. But he just stands there, breathing heavily, his face contorted with anger. You ungrateful old woman, he hisses. After all I've done for you. What exactly do you do for me, Declan? I ask. Visit once a month? Call to make sure I'm not dead and disinherited? You don't understand. He tries to pull himself together. You can't live alone in this big house. It's dangerous and wasteful. This is my house and my life, I say firmly, and I decide what I do with it. Not you. Declan gives me a long look, then turns and walks out, slamming the door so hard the glass rattles. I sink back into my chair, feeling my hands shake. This was the first real confrontation between us in years. I'd always relented, always compromised, afraid of losing the last thread that connected me to my son. But now something has changed. Maybe Edward's death. Maybe the realization that Declan will never change, never be the caring son I dreamed of. I pull out my phone and go to the airline's website. I look at the flight schedule to Barcelona. The closest one is in 3 days. I click book and enter my credit card information. It's time to start preparing for a new life. Away from toxic relationships, away from manipulation and lies. In the house Edward prepared for me, as if anticipating what would happen after he died. I don't speak Spanish, barely know the country I'm about to move to, but somehow I feel strangely calm. Perhaps it's what they call a second breath, a sudden burst of strength and determination when everything seems lost. After our fight, Declan didn't call or show up for almost a week, probably waiting for my anger to subside or trying to find a new approach to the problem, as he no doubt calls me in his conversations with Vanity. I used the time to look more closely at the deeds to the Spanish house and to contact the bank, to make sure the account was actually active and available to me. Edward had organized everything flawlessly. The bank card linked to the Spanish account worked. The house manager, Javier Rodriguez, responded to my email, confirming that the house was in good condition and ready to move in at a moment's notice. Your husband was a very prudent man, Senora, he wrote. I couldn't agree more. Tuesday morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The sun was still just rising, coloring the sky a soft pink. I went down to the kitchen, made coffee, and sat by the window, looking out at the garden Edward loved so much. The roses were just beginning to bloom. He wouldn't see them this year. It was strange how little things like that sometimes caused more sadness than global changes. My phone jingled, alerting me to a message. I unlocked the screen and froze for a moment, looking at the text from Declan. Mom, pack your bags. The house is sold. 7 words. 7 cold, soulless words letting me know that the place where I'd lived most of my life no longer belonged to me. No sorry about that or, we'll find you a good place to live. Just a fact, stated with an efficiency a robot would envy. I reread the message several times, expecting to wake up in pain or rage, but instead I felt strangely relieved. It was as if the last thread holding me trapped in my old life had finally broken. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I could have responded with an angry tirade, a reminder of the signature forgery, a threat of legal consequences. But instead I wrote, okay, I'll find a place to go. After sending the message, I took a sip of coffee, savoring its bitter flavor. I wondered if they could make good coffee in Spain. Surely they do, they've had plenty of time to do it. The phone rang again. I was expecting another message from Declan, maybe asking where I was going to move to, or offering to help me pack. But the screen showed Estelle's name. How are you, darling? Did I hear the news? I told Estelle about the house in Spain shortly after Edward's funeral. She was the only person I could trust with the secret without fear of the information reaching Declan. Declan just informed me that he sold the house. He didn't even ask where I was going, I replied. The reply came instantly. Scumbag, what are you going to do? I took a deep breath and made the decision that had been maturing in me since the moment I learned of the existence of the Spanish house. I think it's time to use Edward's emergency exit. I'm going to fly to Spain. Are you sure, Lori? It's a big step. And where does that leave me? Wait for Declan to completely strip me of everything? He's already shown what he's willing to do. You could go to the police, Estelle suggested. Forging a signature is a felony, I wondered. File a report on my own son? Despite everything he'd done, the thought was causing internal resistance. I don't want to take it to the police, I finally answered. At least not yet, but I have to protect myself. When are you thinking of flying? I'll see what the next flights are. We need to act fast before Declan comes up with something else. Keep me in the loop, and if you need help, I'm here for you. Thanking Estelle, I opened my laptop and began searching for airfare to Barcelona, the closest major city to the village where the house was located. I found a flight 3 days later at 10 in the morning. Not too soon to be rushed, but not far enough away for Declan to get in the way. I clicked book and entered my credit card information, feeling a step closer to freedom with each movement of my fingers. Around 3 in the afternoon, the phone rang. Declan's number. I hesitated, but answered anyway. Did you get my message? He asked without greeting. Yes, I did, I answered calmly. What are you thinking of doing? He sounded impatient, as if my plans were a minor detail in his schedule. As I wrote, I'll find somewhere to go. There was a pause. Apparently, he was expecting questions, requests for help, or perhaps a tantrum. Vanity and I think the Sun Acres is still a good option for you, he said finally. There are some seats available there. Thank you, but I've already decided on that. My voice sounded more confident than I'd expected. Really? There was suspicion in his tone. Where are you going to move to? I have options, I said evasively. What options? He insisted. Are you going to Estelle's? Her house is too small for two people. Interestingly, he hadn't even considered the possibility that I could move in with him and Vanity. In fact, I'd have said no even if they'd offered. Don't worry about it, Declan. I'll be fine. Mom, don't be silly. You're 65. You have blood pressure problems and you've never lived alone. You need help. It's weird coming from the man who just threw me out of my own house. I appreciate your concern, I said, trying to keep the sarcasm out of my voice, but I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself. We'll discuss it when we meet, he said, his tone unobjectionable. I'll stop by tomorrow and we'll look at Sunny Acres together. The new owners want to move in 2 weeks, so we have to hurry. I'll be busy tomorrow, I replied. With what? He sounded genuinely surprised, as if he couldn't imagine that I had any plans. I have a meeting with my lawyer, I lied, deciding that a little lie was acceptable in my situation. With a lawyer? Now there was concern in his voice. Why? To discuss my rights in the house situation, especially since I hadn't signed a power of attorney to sell it. There was a long pause. It's not necessary, Mom, he said at last, trying to sound reasonable. We can work it out in the family. There's no need for lawyers. Of course not. Lawyers could ask uncomfortable questions about forged documents. We'll see, I replied. Anyway, I'm busy tomorrow. Okay, Thursday then. He didn't give up. And Mom, please don't do anything stupid. I just want you to be safe. I almost laughed at the irony of the situation. My son, who just robbed me of my home through fraud, is worried about my safety. Goodbye, Declan, I said, and hung up without waiting for an answer. I looked at the phone screen, feeling strangely calm. The decision had been made, the ticket had been purchased. In 3 days, I would be on my way to a new life, away from toxic relationships and manipulation. In the evening, Estelle called. Have you bought your ticket yet? She asked without preamble. Yes, for Friday, 10 o'clock in the morning. Great, I'll drive you to the airport. I don't want to bother you, I started, but she interrupted. Don't even think about saying no. I'll drive you, period. What's more, I'm offering to pick you up early to avoid a possible encounter with Declan. He could make a scene at the last minute. I knew she was right. Declan's not the type to let go of control easily. Thank you, Estelle. I don't know what I'd do without you. The same thing you're doing now. Fight for your freedom. Just maybe with more difficulty, she said quietly. Are you going to tell him where you're going? I thought about it. No, I finally decided. Let him find out for himself. If he really wants to know where I am, he can call. He has my phone number. Do you think he'll come looking for you? At first, maybe out of annoyance that his plans were interrupted. Then, I don't know. Maybe he'll even be relieved that he doesn't have to take care of his old mom. Don't say that, Lori. You're not old. And even if you were, children should take care of their parents. It's normal. Maybe, I sighed. But the world doesn't always work the way it should. Either way, I no longer expect from Declan what he can't or won't give. After talking to Estelle, I felt a new surge of determination. I'm going to miss her, one of the few people truly close to me. But she promised to come visit me as soon as I was settled in. The next day passed in a strange calm. I didn't start packing, it was early, and I didn't want to risk Declan dropping by unexpectedly. Instead, I made a mental list of what I would take with me. How do I pack 65 years of my life into 2 suitcases? What to take and what to leave behind? Not easy decisions, but they could wait another day. The phone vibrated around noon. A message from Declan. Arranged a meeting at Sunny Acres for Thursday, 1400 hours. Pick you up at 13:30. He didn't even ask if that time was good for me, just put it in front of me like he always did. I didn't bother answering. I'd have other plans by Thursday and no Sun Acres would bother me. In the evening, I looked at pictures of the Spanish village where my new home was located. El Pueblo del Mar is a small coastal town with white houses, narrow streets, and stunning views of the Mediterranean Sea. From the photos, the place looked exactly as Edward had described it. Quiet, sunny, perfect for a quiet retirement. Declan showed up on my doorstep the next day. No warning, no call. Just rang the doorbell around 2 in the afternoon. You didn't answer my message about Thursday, he said instead of greeting me, walking into the house. I was busy, I replied, trying to hide my irritation at his unceremonious intrusion. Busy with what? He looked around the living room as if searching for evidence of my busyness. Did you see a lawyer? That's none of your business, Declan. He raised his eyebrows. None of my business? Mom, I'm trying to help you, and you're acting, weird. Weird? I almost laughed. You sold my house without my consent, forging my signature on the deed, and I'm acting weird. I was acting in your best interest, he said with such conviction that for a moment I almost believed he believed it. You need help, professional care. Sun Acres is the perfect place for you. I already told you, I found another option. What's that? He crossed his arms across his chest. You still haven't told me where you're going to move. And I won't, I said firmly. You forfeited your right to know what I was planning the moment you decided to take over my life without my consent. Declan stared at me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. Surprise, annoyance, maybe even fear that his carefully thought-out plan might fall apart. You can't live alone, Mom, he finally said. It's dangerous. What if you fall? What if you get sick at night? The same thing that would happen to any other adult, I replied. I'll call for help. Declan, I'm 65, not 95. I'm quite independent. But your blood pressure's... It's under control thanks to the medication, which, by the way, I take regularly, no reminders. He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture he always did when he was annoyed. Why are you making this so difficult? I just want to help. No, Declan. I looked him straight in the eye. You want to control. It's not the same thing. I'm your son. His voice got higher. Who better than me to take care of you? Taking care doesn't include selling my house without my consent or forging my signature on documents. I kept my composure, even though I was seething inside. It's manipulation and control. He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Maybe he was. Maybe he'd never seen the real Lorraine before. Just the comfortable, compliant mother who always said yes and never caused problems. I'll come on Thursday, he finally said in a tone that allowed no objection. We'll watch Sunny Acres and make a decision together, as a family. I didn't argue. What was the point? I'll be gone by Thursday. Whatever you say, Declan, I said as I walked him to the door. He left without saying goodbye, clearly unhappy with the way the conversation had gone. I went back into the living room and sat down in my chair, feeling strangely calm. 2 more days and I'd be free of this toxic relationship, this constant pressure and manipulation. I pulled out my phone and texted Estelle. Declan came by. Insists on Sunny Acres. I haven't told him my plans. The reply came almost instantly. Right. Let him find out after the fact. Are you sure you don't want me to stay with you until you leave? No, that's all right. He's not coming until Thursday and we're flying out on Friday. It'll be fine. I put the phone away and looked out the window at the garden Edward loved so much. The roses were starting to bloom, and the apple trees were covered in delicate buds. The new owners would probably change all that. They'd dig up the flower beds, cut down the old trees, do fancy landscaping. But that is no longer my concern. My future lies elsewhere, under a different sky. I felt no sadness about leaving, only a strange relief. It was as if the weight I'd been carrying all these years, the weight of conforming to expectations, of pleasing others, of tacitly accepting injustice, had finally fallen from my shoulders. Friday, 10 o'clock in the morning, flight to Barcelona, the beginning of a new chapter of my life. And Declan? He'll arrive Thursday at 13:30 and find me here, still unaware of his plans. And then when he tries to contact me on Friday and can't, he'll get worried or angry. Maybe he'll call, maybe he'll even look for me. But that's no longer my concern. I had made my choice, and for the first time in a long time, it was truly my choice. Toward evening, I felt hungry again, a strange sensation that had almost disappeared after Edward's death. I made myself a simple dinner, and as I ate, I thought about what my life in Spain would be like. I didn't speak Spanish, didn't know much of the country, but somehow the unknown didn't scare me. It excited me. It was a chance to start with a clean slate, without the burden of the past, without toxic relationships. My phone buzzed, alerting me to a new message. I expected to see Estelle's name, but it was Declan again. Mom, you didn't answer about Thursday. I'll stop by at 13:30. Be ready. Even now, a commanding tone, Not a hint of question or request, just a directive for me to follow. I put the phone down without answering. What could I say? Sorry, son, but I'll be thousands of kilometers away enjoying the view of the Mediterranean? No, let him deal with the consequences of his actions. I went to bed earlier than usual, feeling strangely calm in anticipation. The plane ticket was bought. Estelle had agreed to drive me to the airport, and the manager of the house in Spain knew of my imminent arrival. All that was left was to wait until Friday and take the first step towards a new life. As I fell asleep, I thought about the little house in the Spanish village Edward had told me about. White walls, red tile roof, a view of the sea from the terrace. A life free of toxic relationships and manipulation. A life on my own terms. Thursday began with the shrill rattle of my alarm clock at 6 in the morning. I'd never been an early bird, but today there was a lot to get done before Declan arrived. The flight was scheduled for tomorrow, 10 in the morning, and I hadn't even started packing yet. I went into the bathroom, washed my face with cold water, and looked at my reflection carefully. The wrinkles around my eyes had gotten deeper in the last few months, and there was more gray hair. But the look had changed, a determination that hadn't been there before. Edward would be proud. After breakfast, I pulled 2 suitcases out of the closet, the large travel suitcase I'd bought for that trip to Spain 15 years ago, and a smaller one for carry-on luggage. I set them on the bed and froze, not knowing where to begin. How to pack 65 years of life into 2 suitcases, what to take and what to leave behind. The photo albums, the letters, the autographed books, the collection of porcelain figurines Edward and I had spent a lifetime collecting. Each thing was a memory, each decision difficult to make. In the end, I decided to take the essentials: clothes, personal papers, a few photographs, the jewelry Edward had given me, and the small porcelain figurine, the first in our collection, the one we'd bought on our wedding day. The rest, well, the rest could wait. Maybe someday I'll come back for my stuff. Or maybe I'll learn to live without them. I methodically packed my suitcases, trying not to make any noise. Even though I knew it was stupid, the neighbors wouldn't hear, and Declan wouldn't arrive until 13:30. Cautiousness had become a habit over the weeks, as had my constant eye on my son's possible reaction. I paused a few times to drink tea and gather my thoughts. Leaving the house I'd lived in for most of my adult life was harder than I'd expected. Not because of the walls or the furniture, because of the memories that were woven into them. This was where Declan had taken his first steps. This is where Edward and I celebrated our wedding anniversaries. This was where we'd grown old together, loving each other with a quiet, unobtrusive love that had only grown stronger over the years. By 11 o'clock, most of my things were packed. I hid the suitcases in the dressing room. If Declan came into the bedroom, he wouldn't see them. Then I pulled all the documents for the Spanish house and the plane ticket out of the safe and packed them in my carry-on, along with the necessary medications and toiletries. Looking at my watch, I realized I still had time to make lunch. Declan never stayed to eat, but today might be different. It could be our last meal together for a long time, maybe forever. Despite all the resentment, the thought brought sadness. I made lasagna, one of the few dishes Declan had always enjoyed eating, even in his cranky teenage years. As I cooked, I thought about how our relationship had changed over time. Once he'd been a little boy who came to me for comfort after every scratch. Then a teenager, distant but still capable of moments of sincerity. And finally, a grown man who saw me only as a burden and a potential inheritance. Where did I go wrong? What could I have done differently? Or was it not my fault, just life, which rarely plays out according to our script? My musings were interrupted by the ringing of the phone. Estelle. "How are the preparations going?" she asked without preamble. "Almost done," I answered, holding the phone to my ear with my shoulder as I took the lasagna out of the oven. "All I have to do is wait for Declan, survive the meeting, and I'm ready." "Are you sure you want to go out with him? You could crash at my place, avoid a confrontation." I thought about it. It was tempting to just leave, leaving Declan a note or even nothing, but something inside me resisted that decision. "No," I finally said. "I have to face him. It's the right thing to do." "Suit yourself." Estelle sounded doubtful. "But be careful. He might try to manipulate you, make you stay. I know he will, but I've made my decision and I'm not backing down." "All right then. I'll pick you up at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. Be ready." We said goodbye, and I went back to my preparations. I set the table, put fresh flowers in a vase, an old habit that's hard to break. The house should look normal, with no signs of leaving soon. At exactly 13:25, I heard the sound of a car pulling up. Taking a deep breath, I walked over to the window. Declan's SUV had stopped in the driveway. He got out alone, without vanity already unusual. Usually they arrive together, presenting a united front. The doorbell rang a minute later. I opened it, trying to look calm and collected. "Declan, come in," I said, stepping aside. He came in, giving me a hard look. "You look good," he said with slight surprise. "Thanks," I smiled. "I made lunch if you're hungry." "Lasagna." Declan froze for a moment, not expecting the welcome. "Actually, I've already had lunch," he said. "And we should be at the Sun Acres in half an hour. Mrs. Harper is waiting for us." "I see." I tried not to show disappointment. "Then perhaps a cup of coffee before we leave." He nodded, and we went into the kitchen. I poured him a cup of coffee, black, no sugar, like he always drank. The little details you remember about your children, even years later. "So," Declan began, sipping his coffee, "Sunny Acres. I talked to Mrs. Harper, and they can take you in as early as next week. They've got a great room opening up overlooking the garden." "Declan," I sat down across from him, "I appreciate your efforts, but I told you I found another solution." "What's that?" He set the cup down. "You still haven't told me where you're going to move." I took a deep breath, preparing myself for a difficult conversation. "I'm moving to another country." Declan stared at me as if I'd just told him I was going to fly to the moon. "What? What are you talking about?" "I'm moving to Spain," I said calmly. "I already bought a ticket for tomorrow." "Spain?" He laughed, but he laughed nervously. "Mom, don't be silly. You can't move to Spain." "Why not?" "Because—" He hesitated, searching for an argument. "Because you don't know the language, you don't have a place to live, you've never lived alone, and you have health problems. It's crazy." "I have a place there," I replied, deciding to start with the simplest objection. Declan was staring at me again, now in obvious disbelief. "What do you mean you have a place to live? You can't just buy a house in another country without telling anyone." "I didn't," I paused. "Your father did, 5 years ago." Now he looked genuinely shocked. "Dad bought a house in Spain and didn't tell me?" "He bought it for me," I clarified. "He told me not to tell anyone, especially you." "Why?" His voice got louder. "Why did he keep it from me?" "Because he was afraid you'd try to get us to sell it and give you the money," I answered bluntly. "Like you're doing with this house right now." Declan jumped up from his chair, his face red with anger. "This is ridiculous! I'm just trying to help you, and you and your father are going behind my back." He paused, apparently realizing something. "Wait a minute. You knew about this house the whole time after my father died, and you didn't tell me anything?" "Yes." I looked him straight in the eye. "And now you can see why." He started pacing around the kitchen, clearly trying to deal with his emotions. "Show me the ticket," he finally demanded. "I want to see that ticket to Spain." I hesitated. The ticket was in my bag, but showing it to Declan seemed risky. "Why?" "Because I don't believe you actually bought the ticket. It's some kind of bluff to avoid moving to Sunny Acres." Deciding that proof couldn't hurt, I went to the hallway where I'd left my bag, pulled out the printed ticket and held it out to Declan when I returned to the kitchen. He grabbed it, looked it over quickly, and went pale. "Tomorrow? You're flying out tomorrow?" "Yes," I nodded. 10 in the morning. Declan threw the ticket on the table as if it burned his fingers. "You can't just leave! What about the house? What about your stuff? What about—" "You already sold the house," I reminded him. Without my consent, by the way. "And the stuff. I took the essentials. The rest I can either sell or keep at Estelle's until I decide what to do with it." "That's crazy," he shook his head. "You can't live alone in a foreign country. You don't even speak Spanish." "Half the people in that village are retirees from England and Germany," I quoted Edward as saying. "I don't need Spanish to be happy there." Declan stared at me as if he were staring at me for the first time. "You've really thought this through, haven't you? All this time pretending to be a helpless old woman who couldn't live without her son while you planned your escape." I never pretended to be helpless, I countered. You're the one who thought I couldn't take care of myself. And this isn't an escape, Declan. This is me choosing a new life. A choice? He laughed bitterly. A choice to leave your family and move thousands of miles away? Your family? I could feel the anger rising inside me now. What family, Declan? The one that visits me once a month just to check on my house? The one that sells my house without my consent? The one that sees me only as a burden? He recoiled as if I'd hit him. It's not fair. I've always cared for you. No. I shook my head. You were looking out for your own interests, about getting my inheritance, about not wasting your time and money on a helpless old lady. I never thought of you that way. Did you? I looked him straight in the eye. Then why didn't you ever suggest I move in with you in Vanity? Why the nursing home right away? Declan was silent, unable to find an answer. And another thing, I continued, feeling the words that had been building up inside me for years finally come out. When was the last time you asked me how I was really feeling? Not about my blood pressure or medication, about my feelings, my thoughts, my dreams. When was the last time you saw me as a person, not a problem to be solved? He stared at the floor, avoiding my gaze. Yeah, I've been busy. Work, home, my own problems. Everyone's busy, Declan. My voice softened. But they make time for the ones they love. We stood in the kitchen in a heavy silence. The sunlight streaming in through the window fell on the table between us, illuminating the abandoned ticket, a symbol of my future and our discord. What now? He finally asked. You're just going to leave tomorrow and that's it? Yes, I nodded. Estelle will drive me to the airport. What about the house in Spain? There was a new note in his voice, calculating, evaluating. Is it in your name too? Here it is, the question that interested him the most. Yes, I answered. Edward put it in my name. And you weren't going to tell me about it? There was an accusation in his tone. Hiding the property from your own son? Not hiding it, protecting it, I corrected him. From the man who sold my house without my consent. It's my inheritance. He suddenly blurted out, and for a moment I saw his true face, greedy, counting on what didn't belong to him. Half of it was supposed to go to me. Inheritance? I shook my head. Declan, I'm still alive. Everything I have is mine, not your future inheritance. Dad always said he'd take care of both of us, he insisted. And now it turns out he secretly bought the house and put it in your name, depriving me of my rightful share. Your legal share of what? I was beginning to lose my patience. The money your father made? The house he bought for me? You're entitled to inherit after I die, Declan, but not while I'm alive. He clenched his fists, his face red with anger. You and your father, you've always been in league with him, always conspired against me, always thinking me unworthy, ungrateful. We loved you, I replied, tears welling up in my eyes. Loved you with all our hearts. But you've changed, Declan. You've changed. Different. I've become a realist, he snapped. Unlike you, who live in a fantasy world where everyone cares about each other for no gain. The words were like a slap in the face. Is that really my son? The boy I raised, taught kindness and compassion? If that's what you really think, I said quietly, then I have even more reason to leave. Declan stared at me, his gaze a mixture of anger, resentment, and something else, maybe the realization that he'd gone too far. You can't just leave, he said again, but without the same confidence. You're my mother. Yes, I am your mother, I agreed. I always will be. But I'm also a human being with my own desires and rights. And now I want to start a new life away from toxic relationships, away from the constant pressure and manipulation. Toxic relationships? He almost shouted those words. Did Estelle put you up to this? Or did you read all those modern psychology books? No, Declan, I shook my head. Living with you in Vanity had taught me to recognize manipulation and emotional abuse. He looked as if I'd slapped him. I didn't realize? Maybe. I softened my tone. But it didn't hurt any less. We were silent again. Birds chirped outside the window and life went on as usual, ignoring our family drama. I'm going to sue, Declan said suddenly. I'll contest the deed to the Spanish house. Prove that my father was incapacitated when he signed the deed. You can't do that. I looked at him calmly. Why not? Because then you'd have to explain why you forged my signature on the power of attorney to sell this house, I replied. I think the judge would be very interested in that story. Declan paled. You wouldn't sue your own son. I wouldn't, I agreed. But if you try to take the Spanish house away from me, I'll do whatever is necessary to defend myself. We stared at each other across the kitchen table, mother and son, almost enemies. How had we gotten to this point? Where was that turning point when love and caring turned into calculation and manipulation? Go away, Declan, I finally said. We have nothing more to say to each other. You'll regret this, he grabbed his jacket. When you're alone in a foreign country with no friends, no language skills, no help, you'll regret it. And don't think you can go back. Not to me. I wasn't going to, I said quietly. Goodbye, Declan. He left, slamming the door so hard that the glass rattled. I stayed in the kitchen, staring at the untouched lasagna and feeling a strange emptiness inside. Not pain, not regret, just emptiness, as if something important had ended, making room for something new. I called Estelle, told her about the fight. He threatened to sue, I concluded. Empty threats, she snorted. He knows you can counterclaim. Besides, international litigation is expensive and time-consuming. He doesn't have the patience or the money. I hope you're right, I sighed. Anyway, now he knows about the house in Spain and that I'm leaving tomorrow. Do you think he might try to interfere? I hesitated for a moment. I don't know. He was very angry. But on the other hand, if I leave, the helpless mother problem will solve itself. Maybe he'd even be happy when he realized it. Let's not take any chances, Estelle decided. I'll pick you up at 6 in the morning, not 7. Better to wait an hour at the airport than to get into trouble. I agreed, feeling grateful for her support and care. That's what true friendship is all about, not control and manipulation, but a genuine desire to help, respecting other people's choices. After talking to Estelle, I went back to packing. Now that Declan knew I was leaving, there was no point in hiding my suitcases. I pulled them out of the dressing room and finished packing them, paying special attention to documents and valuables, anything that couldn't be easily replaced in my new life. In the evening, I walked through the house one more time, saying goodbye to every room, every corner that held memories. The bedroom where Edward and I had spent so many nights talking about the day before. Declan's nursery, long ago turned into a guest room, but still bearing traces of his childhood in the form of height marks on the door jamb. In the kitchen, where I'd made thousands of meals, where we'd celebrated birthdays and holidays. Edward's study was where I stayed the longest. His presence was stronger here than anywhere else. I sat down in his chair, ran my hand over the tabletop, breathed in the smell of old books and leather. You were right, Edward, I whispered. Thank you for taking care of me. Before I went to bed, I checked my papers again, my ticket, my passport, everything was in order. Then I showered, drank a cup of herbal tea, and went to bed, wondering how calm I felt after such an emotional scene with Declan. Maybe it was because I'd finally said everything I'd been saying for years, or because I'd made a decision and knew it was the right one. Either way, I felt not fear of an unknown future, but a quiet anticipation of new possibilities. As I fell asleep, I thought about how I'd changed in the weeks since Edward's death. From a quiet, compliant woman who'd always put the needs of others before her own, I'd become a person who could stand up for herself, make tough decisions, and start a new life at 65. Edward would be proud of me. And Declan. Well, maybe one day he'll understand. Maybe time and distance will help him see things differently. Or maybe not. Either way, I could no longer build my life around his approval or disapproval. The alarm clock rang at 5 in the morning, though I was already awake. The excitement of leaving had kept me up all night as I fell into a restless sleep, then woke up again to check the time. Today was the beginning of my new life, and the thought was both frightening and exhilarating. I took a quick shower, got dressed, and checked my suitcases one more time. Everything was ready. Estelle was due at 6, and my flight left at 10. Plenty of time to get to the airport safely, even with the morning traffic. At 5:30, I went down to the kitchen for the last coffee in the house. Turning on the kettle, I went to the window and pulled back the curtain. And froze. Declan's car was parked in the street, right in front of the house. At first, I thought I was imagining it. Maybe it was a similar car. But no, it was his SUV. I'd recognize it anywhere. What's Declan doing here this early? Had he decided to make another scene before I left? I moved away from the window, trying not to attract attention. My phone read 5:35. Estelle was still 25 minutes away. I dialed her number, trying not to panic. Lori? She answered sleepily. Is something wrong? Declan's here, I whispered, even though I knew he couldn't hear me. He's sitting in the car in front of the house. Shit. Estelle woke up instantly. Did he see you? No, I saw him from the window. It looks like he's going to stop me from leaving. I'll be there in 15 minutes, she said firmly. Pack your things and wait for me at the back door. The back? But there's no driveway. Exactly. I'll park on the next street and go through Mrs. Peabody's garden. She owes me for those pink cuttings I gave her last year. I smiled, despite the nervousness of the situation. Estelle had always been resourceful, even in her youth, when we'd run away from tedious college lectures together. Okay, I agreed. I'll be waiting. I finished my coffee and headed for my suitcases. Every move had to be careful not to attract Declan's attention. I turned off the lights in the hallway and living room, leaving only the dim lamp in the kitchen to make it look like everyone was still asleep. At 5:50, I was already standing at the back door with 2 suitcases and a bag. My heart was pounding with tension and a strange excitement, like I was in a spy movie. Who would have thought that at 65, I would have to sneak out of my own house running away from my son? At precisely 6 o'clock, the phone vibrated, a message from Estelle. I'm at the fence, come out. I opened the back door, trying not to make any noise, and stepped out into the garden. The morning chill embraced me, the dew wetting my shoes. I dragged the suitcases down the narrow garden path to the fence, where Estelle was already waiting, in a tracksuit and a determined expression on her face. Give it here, she whispered, taking the large suitcase from me. The car was around the corner. We made our way through Mrs. Peabody's garden, careful not to trample her favorite flowers. The elderly neighbor seemed to still be asleep. It was dark in her house. When I reached the next street, I saw Estelle's car parked under a large oak tree. Hurry, Estelle urged, helping me load my suitcases into the trunk. We have to get out of here before your son suspects anything. We got into the car, and Estelle drove off carefully, keeping the headlights off until we were well away from my house. I can't believe we're having to do this, I said, still nervous with worry. It's like I'm some kind of criminal running from the law. The criminal here is your son, Estelle cut me off. Forging documents, trying to sell your house without consent, and now you're being followed. I wouldn't be surprised if he tried to physically stop you from leaving. I sighed, recognizing my friend's point. Declan had really gone too far. Do you think he'll call the police? I asked, suddenly troubled by a new thought. What if he reported me missing? And what would he say? Help. My mother ran away from me to live in her own house in Spain? Estelle snorted. You're a grown woman, Lori. You have every right to go wherever you want. She was right, and yet the anxiety wouldn't let go of me. I knew Declan. He wasn't the type to give up easily. We drove in silence for a while, pulling out of the suburbs and onto the highway leading to the airport. The morning fog had not yet cleared, giving the landscape outside the window a ghostly, unreal look. It was as if nature itself had decided to set the stage for my escape to a new life. I got a strange call last night, Estelle said, breaking the silence. It was from your cousin Marjorie. Marjorie? I turned to my friend in surprise. We hadn't spoken in years. What did she want? Oh, she was very concerned about you. Estelle sounded sarcastic. She said something about you making rash decisions, that you needed your family's help during this difficult time, and that Declan was just trying to take care of you. I froze, realizing what was happening. Declan had contacted her? But why? Gathering an army, Estelle gave me a quick glance. Getting the relatives on his side to pressure you. Classic manipulative tactic. If you can't control her directly, bring in allies. And what did you tell her? That you were a grown woman, capable of making your own decisions, and that if she really cared about you, she could call you personally instead of listening to Declan's one-sided version. Estelle grinned. She wasn't particularly pleased. I shook my head, feeling a mixture of annoyance and sadness. Marjorie had always liked to meddle in other people's affairs, but we'd never been particularly close. The fact that Declan had approached her showed how desperate he was to keep control of the situation. Who else called? I asked, realizing Marjorie wasn't the only one. Your nephew Richard left a message on the answering machine, and some Helen who said she was an old family friend. God, I closed my eyes. I hadn't seen Helen in 10 years. She hadn't even come to Edward's funeral. My phone vibrated an incoming call. I looked at the screen and saw Declan's name. It's him, I said to Estelle. What do I do? It's up to you, she said. But if you do, be prepared to be emotionally blackmailed. I hesitated, staring at the vibrating phone. Part of me wanted to answer, to explain, maybe even try to patch things up before I left. But the other part of me realized that any conversation now would only complicate the situation. The phone stopped vibrating, but it started again almost immediately. Declan wasn't giving up. I have to answer it, I decided. Otherwise, he might actually call the police. Estelle nodded, keeping her eyes on the road. I took a deep breath and pressed the receive button. Yes, Declan. Where the hell are you? His voice sounded angry and scared at the same time. I've been standing in front of your house for an hour. I'm on my way to the airport, I said calmly. My flight leaves at 10, remember? How did you? He stammered, apparently realizing that I had somehow slipped away unnoticed. Look, Mom, you can't just leave. We have to discuss this like adults. We already did yesterday, Declan. My decision hasn't changed. I talked to Aunt Marjorie. His tone changed, almost pleading. She agrees that you shouldn't go so far away, especially now that your father's dead. It's too drastic a step. Marjorie hasn't seen me in 3 years, I replied. And I don't remember asking her opinion of my life. Everyone's worried about you. There was a note of irritation in his voice again. Richard, Helen, even your father's old friends all think you're being rash. Where were they when Edward was dying? I felt anger rising inside me. Where were they when I mourned his death, and now they're worried? There was a pause. I could hear Declan's heavy breathing on the other end of the line. I'm going to sue, he finally said. I'll contest the deed to the Spanish house, prove that my father was incapacitated when he signed the deed. We talked about this yesterday, I reminded him. You know those are empty threats. No, I'm serious. His voice became hard. I have a lawyer. He says we have a good chance, especially since the house was bought in secret from the rightful heir. Let's not end up with lawsuits and threats, I said softly. You're my son. I'll always love you, no matter what. Then come back, he almost shouted. Cancel the flight, come home, and we'll talk about it. We'll find a compromise. No, Declan, I said firmly. I'm not going back. I'm going to Spain today, and I'm starting a new life. If you want to be a part of it as an equal, with respect, I'm always happy to. But I won't let you control me anymore. You'll regret it. His voice turned icy. When you find yourself alone in a foreign country with no friends, no language skills, no help, you'll regret it. And don't think you can go back. Not to me. I don't intend to, I said quietly. Goodbye, Declan. I ended the call feeling strangely light, as if a heavy weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Estelle gave me a sympathetic look. Are you all right? Yes, I nodded, wondering how true that was. In fact, I felt better than I'd expected. We got into the airport around 7:30, a lot earlier than we'd needed to be. But given the circumstances, it was better to be reassured. Estelle helped me check in and drop off my luggage, and then we settled into the cafe, waiting for the boarding announcement. Are you sure you don't want me to go with you? She asked. I could take a vacation, help you get settled. No, thank you, I smiled, touched by her concern. It's something I have to do on my own. Besides, you promised to come visit in a month when I'd settled in a little. I will, she nodded. And I'll call every day to check on you. At 9 o'clock, they announced the boarding of my flight. Estelle and I hugged goodbye, both of us with tears in our eyes. Call me as soon as you land, she said. And don't forget that you always have a friend here if anything goes wrong. I know, I squeezed her hands tightly. Thank you for everything. I went through passport control and headed for the gate, glancing back at Estelle as she waved at me. My heart clenched at the thought of leaving behind not only a toxic relationship with my son, but a true friendship that would last decades. The landing was uneventful. I settled into the window seat, watching the ground crew prepare the plane for departure. My phone vibrated again. Another call from Declan. I hesitated, but decided to answer it one last time. Yes, Declan. Mom, please. His voice sounded almost desperate. Don't do this. We can fix this. We could have fixed it before, I said softly. But you chose control over caring, manipulation over respect. I can't live like this anymore. I'll change, he promised. I swear I'll be better. Just don't go. I'm already on the plane, Declan, I said. We'll be taking off in a few minutes. But your flight isn't until 10. I boarded early, I explained. Goodbye, Declan. I wish you happiness, I really do. And I hope someday you'll understand why I made this choice. Mom, wait, but I had already ended the call. At the same moment, the flight attendant announced the need to put all electronic devices into airplane mode before takeoff. I turned off my phone, leaned back in my seat, and closed my eyes, feeling strangely calm. 20 minutes later, the plane lifted off the ground. I watched Cloverdale get smaller and smaller until it disappeared behind the clouds. Along with it, my old life disappeared with its pain and unfulfilled hopes. After landing in Barcelona, I went through passport control, got my luggage, and went to the arrivals hall. According to instructions from Javier, the house manager, I was to find a cab to the bus station and from there a bus to El Pueblo del Mar. It was the first time I was traveling alone, without Edward or Declan organizing everything for me. A strange sense of uncertainty mixed with the excitement of new experiences. The signs in Spanish and English, the announcements on the loudspeaker, the crowds of tourists from all over the world. Everything seemed both foreign and exciting. The bus to El Pueblo del Mar traveled along the coast, offering stunning views of the Mediterranean Sea. I stared out the window, unable to believe this was happening to me. Lorraine Newport, a 65-year-old widow who had spent her entire life in one town, always putting the needs of others before her own. When the bus stopped in a small village, I recognized Javier immediately from his description, a short, stocky, middle-aged man with a bushy mustache and a friendly smile. He waved to me, helped me with my suitcases, and walked me to a small van. We drove through narrow streets, past white houses with red-tiled roofs, flowering gardens, and small squares with fountains. The village seemed like a postcard, cozy, peaceful, as if frozen in time. Finally, the van stopped in front of a small two-story house, standing a little apart from the others on a small hill. The terrace overlooked the sea, just as Edward had described. Your house, Senora, Javier pointed proudly at the building. It's a very nice house. I got out of the car, my legs shaking with excitement. That little white house with the blue shutters and the terracotta pots of geraniums at the front door was my home now, the place where I will start my new life. Javier helped me carry my suitcases in and gave me a brief tour. The house was small but cozy. A living room with a kitchen, 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, and a terrace overlooking the sea. Everything was clean and ready for my arrival, even fresh flowers in a vase on the table. Edward asked me to always have flowers, Javier explained, noticing my gaze. He said you liked flowers. I felt tears come to my eyes. Edward remembered the little things, taking care of me even after he died. After Javier left, I was alone in the silence of the new house. Stepping out onto the terrace, I breathed in the sea air deeply, enjoying the warm evening sun on my face. The sea rumbled below, seagulls shouted aloft, and in the distance I could see the silhouettes of fishing boats returning to the harbor. I pulled out my phone and turned it on. A few missed calls from Declan, a message from Estelle asking if I'd made it safely. I answered Estelle with a short, "I'm fine, I'll give you the details later," and decided not to call Declan back. At least not today. Today was my day, the day I started my new life. I unpacked, showered, changed into a light dress, and returned to the terrace with a glass of wine that Javier had thoughtfully left behind. Sitting in the wicker chair, I watched the sun slowly sink toward the horizon, coloring the sea with golden tones. I raised my glass, making a silent toast. To us, Edward. To the time we've had and to the time I'll still have.